Welcome to In the Middle, a podcast on Christianity in the Middle East, where we explore questions of history, religion, culture, and policy that affects the ancient and indigenous Christian communities of the Middle East. I'm honored to be joined today by Joshua Benjamin and Elaria Essak of Coptic Orphans, a U.S.-based advocacy and charity organization whose mission is to serve Coptic Christian orphans in Egypt. Together, we discuss the history, legacy, and trials of Egypt's Coptic Christian community and got a glimpse into the important work and impact of Coptic Orphans. So, without further ado, thanks for joining the conversation and welcome to In the Middle. Joshua, Elaria, thanks for coming in. Great to have you.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely welcome. So it's great that we're actually doing this podcast. We've been sort of playing cat and mouse, chasing each other for about a number of months at least to get you on.
Yeah.
And glad to actually have you in today. Yesterday we had Capitol Hill Advocacy Day.
Yep.
You guys were an important part of it, representing Coptic Orphans. You had a good little group there. Would you have about 6 people in your group or so?
Yeah, in and out. And throughout the day, some other volunteers were coming and helping too. So
Excellent. I got your feedback, but it sounded like you had a good day. You met with a bunch of offices on the Hill and had some good conversations. So I want to tell you thank you. I appreciate your taking part. We couldn't have had a complete Hill Day without you because you definitely represented an area that is often unrepresented.
No, and honestly, thank you so much for including Egypt and making an Egypt group. I feel like as we're doing all this work and we're trying to, utilize Coptic Orphans platform, it's always difficult to find a seat at the table. And so having an Egypt group focused specifically on the Copts really made us feel seen. It made us feel represented. So we really appreciated that.
Absolutely. No, it was my pleasure. And I'd be remiss not to. The thing with the Copts, in fact, is I think I mentioned yesterday in the briefing, they comprise the largest Christian community in the entire Middle East, but oftentimes go unnoticed. But it's great to have had you part of the day.
We want to thank Father Thomas Zane, I apologize, also for supporting us. I think having his presence with us at these various meetings just gave legitimacy to what we were saying, and it was very nice to have his support as well. So
Absolutely,
thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So I want to actually give it over to you. Most of our audience is familiar with who the Copts are, a bit about Coptic history, or at least have an awareness that there's a community called the Coptic Christians. But if you want to just take a moment and share with our audience, who are the Copts and what's their role in Christian history?
Sure. So the Copts are just very simply the indigenous people of Egypt. And so most obviously the Copts today are a Christian population and became Christians after the Apostle Mark preached Christianity in Egypt. There are some reports that Christianity may have existed a little bit before that, because in fact in the book of Acts, if you look at the day of Pentecost, when it talks about all the people who came on the day of Pentecost to hear the word, the Egyptians are mentioned. And so there are some reports that in fact Christianity may have made its way to Egypt slightly before Mark. But in any case, Christianity in Egypt is very old, in the 1st century in fact. So it's one of the oldest sects of Christianity. And we're very proud that we have many elements of Egyptian culture embedded in our Coptic Christian faith. And similarly, the Coptic Christians now are, like I said, kind of the pre-Arab invasion group of Egyptians and are believed to have descended from the ancients.
And there is a Coptic language, I understand.
Yeah.
Yes, the Coptic language is descendant from the old Egyptian languages, the last of which was Demotic, before it kind of transitioned to Coptic. The Coptic language borrows a lot from Greek. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the Greco-Roman Empire, and at that time in Egypt was very strong, and so a lot of borrowing. They say about 15 to 20% of words in the Coptic language are Greek. Wow. And in fact, the Coptic alphabet today borrows a lot from the modern Greek alphabet. They look very similar.
I've seen that. Very interesting. How much of Coptic today? You said about 15 to 20% is Greek. How much Arabic influence has gone into the language?
I think there is a bit of Arabic influence, but the remarkable thing actually is that the Coptic language has influenced Arabic, and in doing so has influenced other languages as well. So I'll give you an example, the word adobe that we know in English. Yeah. Adobe obviously meaning kind of like the material used to the building material, right? And so we took that from Spanish. When the Spanish invasion in the like south of the United States introduced that, and so we took that from Spanish. Spanish took it from Arabic, tuba. which means stone. But Tobi in Coptic means stone.
Interesting.
So in fact, that English word comes from Coptic.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like 3 generations back, 4 generations,
Exactly.
linguistic generations ago.
So it shows
cool.
how much the Coptic people have had sort of this very old ancient presence. There are many other examples like this, but like I said, there are many examples not only in Egyptian Arabic, largely in Egyptian Arabic, but in other dialects as well, where you can see the influence of the Coptic language. But certainly I'm sure that the Coptic language has absorbed some Arabic influence as well.
And today it's a purely a liturgical language, correct?
Yes, it's a purely liturgical language. There are some pockets of people around the world who do speak it at home and want to revive it, and so they try to kind of preserve it. But at large, most Coptic people do not speak the Coptic language anymore.
Like we can probably read it, like if we're at church, you know, and we see it up there, we can read it. I'm sure Elaria and I both have some, you know, literacy in it, but you might be reading and pronouncing and understanding, but it's difficult to kind of know what the translation is.
Right.
So it's more of a liturgical language than kind of like an at-home language.
Sorry to go down a rabbit hole with language, but I'm fascinated, absolutely fascinated with languages, particularly, you know, ancient indigenous languages. But you mentioned that there are a few homes that they still use it at home. Is that something that they've revived, you know, made a concerted effort to do, or is that just like a natural handing down of languages that was just organically transmitted?
Yeah, so I've heard both accounts. Like in some places in Upper Egypt, it's reported that they have just kept it from generation to generation to generation. And then there are some other places, I've heard, for example, of this family in Germany, for example, that they have just sort of made a concerted effort over the years, like, you know, there was a priest in the family who said, I really want to preserve this language, and so I'm going to learn it very well and teach it to my kids, and it just kept going from there.
Very cool.
All of this is obviously anecdotal, you know, we're not exactly sure how things got passed down, but it could have been one of either of those ways.
Now, speaking of, we're talking about Copts, we talked a bit about language, church, the history. I want to ask about the Copts currently today in terms of how they view themselves, be it in Egypt or be it in the diaspora, in terms of ethnic identity. So do they view themselves as Copts as an ethnicity, or do they view Coptic, you know, the Coptic identifier as purely a church name or a church identity, or do they view that as their ethnicity?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I can let Josh talk a little bit about his experience with this too, but I think each person's experience is unique in a lot of ways, and we can't speak for everyone, but we've always been taught that Coptic is sort of an ethnic identifier, and we know that in a lot of Orthodox churches, Coptic Orthodox, you know, Armenian Orthodox, whatever, Armenian Apostolic, these churches are inherently ethno-religious, right? And so there is kind of that ethnic aspect that accompanies the Christian aspect, the Orthodox Christian aspect. Copts are not unique. You know, we have our own Coptic Orthodox. It's both. It's ethnic and religious. And so I think Coptic, yes, can and is an ethnic identity for many, many Copts. It is not merely a religious identity. What's your take?
Yeah, I would say it's, you know, different between every person that you ask, but it's a question that's always asked, right?
Yeah.
It's something that, you know, is studied. There's people who specialize in these kind of things, you know, and oftentimes you'll have kids growing up who might have an identity crisis with this aspect, right? And so, I would highly recommend Sam Tedros's book, Motherland Lost.
Yeah. I
think it's an incredible, you know, commentary on the Coptic identity. But I think that the common factor isn't just ethno-religious, or it's a factor of resilience that I think really keeps the Copts as identifies who Copt is. You know, you have stories like the 21 Martyrs. You have stories of you know, the history of persecution of the Copts, and so when you're looking to find an identifier between every single Copt, that idea of resilience and that idea of, you know, unity between them kind of circumvents, or kind of, you know, is prioritized a little higher than the identity of, okay, you know, do we consider ourselves this or that? No, it's more the idea of you know, who we are as a group.
Yeah.
And that, like I said, but I think that is something that every single Copt faces. Every single Copt has been asked. Every single Copt has thought about.
Yeah.
And so there's probably different opinions out there. I don't think there's one general, like, accepted belief.
The Coptic, sometimes referred to as the Coptic nation, does in fact have its own flag, for example.
Right.
I don't think it's very like a widespread knowledge that we have this, but you know, this shows that people have very much a pride in being Coptic, and that they do consider themselves distinct, if you will, from maybe other groups. And so this shows that there is a distinct group identity.
Yeah, no, I admire that because that's really what's going to sustain any group, any stateless group. Not to say the Copts are stateless, but any ethnic group that sort of transcends what we understand today as a state, as a a political entity. It is that feeling of oneness, of identity, of a common thread historically and presently within the community. So I think that's awesome. Sam is a great friend. I'll definitely have to check out his book.
Oh, it's a
so I'll have to
great
get that
read.
from you after the
Absolutely.
name, so I can pull it up.
Great book, Motherland Lost. I mean, it talks about a history of the Copts and then, in search of modernity, right? Like Egypt's search of modernity. And I think it's such an incredible commentary. Yeah, I just finished it recently. Absolutely loved it.
Excellent. I'll have to keep my eye out for it. Speaking of the present status of Copts, both, again, in Egypt and in the diaspora, sort of talk me through the diaspora, when it began, what the status is today, where you find most Copts. I know here in the DMV, in the DC area, that is, large Coptic community. And I've had a lot of interaction, and I've always been very impressed with the folks that I've met. But talk me through, what does the diaspora look like?
Sure. So the diaspora is very rich. Obviously, some concentrated areas of the diaspora outside of Egypt are the U.S., Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom. There are certainly pockets of Copts outside of those areas, but those are kind of where we find the largest areas. They say that the first Coptic churches outside of Egypt were probably in the United Kingdom. It's really hard to track sometimes because the reporting mechanisms are not always there, and we think about where Coptic people congregate based on where the churches are. But certainly Coptic people can congregate not where those churches are. So those churches are kind of used as an identifier or sort of like a metric to measure how many Coptic people are in the area and where are they congregating, this sort of thing. So in the U.S. we have about 500,000 Coptic people. About 150,000 of that 500,000 are in New Jersey alone. And so as far as number of Coptic churches, again, used as a metric to kind of measure the magnitude of the community, over 30 in New Jersey. Another large area is in Los Angeles metropolitan area. And then you find also like in DC, like you said, a lot in Florida. And so it just kind of depends where you go. You'll find larger concentrations. In the United Kingdom, it's in the London area, Australia, Sydney, Melbourne, and in Canada, in the Mississauga area. Mississauga has a very high concentration of Copts. It's a suburb of Toronto. And that one in Mississauga, they say, is where the first Coptic diaspora of North America was established.
And when was that?
In the 60s, is supposedly.
The very first community was established in the 60s.
Yes.
Wow.
That's what they say, right? And so the reports, it's again very kind of passed down generation to generation. But so yes, the Coptic diaspora is relatively new in a lot of ways. Copts have remained in Egypt for many, many years, and I think there are other Middle Eastern Christian groups or Middle Eastern groups that have left the Middle East and gone to the diaspora much earlier. But Josh and I are both actually, well, I don't want to speak for your experience, but I'm a daughter of immigrants, and I think a lot of people my age are sons and daughters of immigrants. We have our first Coptic senator, George Hilmi.
That's right. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. We're excited about it, and congrats to him, actually. But I was going to say
representing the state of New Jersey, we'll mention.
Absolutely.
Yes, exactly. I was going to say he's in his mid-40s and is a son of immigrants too. And so I think you're seeing now it is a very new thing to be Coptic in the United States and be the son or daughter of somebody who was born in the United States. It's a kind of a newer thing. So that kind of speaks to the recency of the diaspora movement outside of Egypt.
Yeah, being someone, I was actually born in Egypt, and then at 4 years old, my parents immigrated here to the United States. And one thing I can definitely say is that, regardless of where you are in the diaspora, the culture is so strong and the resiliency of the faith is so prominent that you feel like it's even though my church was really small, my church had maybe 100 families total, and so it was a tiny small church. But when you went to church, it felt like Egypt. You know what I mean? It felt like home. One thing, a quote that I absolutely love is someone said about the 21 martyrs of Libya, I never knew them, but they were my brothers, right? And it's the same concept. I never met some of these Coptic people, and yet because of the resiliency to preserve the faith, I know what their top 5 favorite foods are, for example, or something like that. We still have that connection even if we have never met. And so the diaspora is really interesting because it's scattered. It's all over the world. And there are big pockets, like Elaria was saying, there's definitely big pockets. But at least through our diaspora initiative programs, we found that no matter where you are from around the world, whether you're meeting up in Egypt from Sydney and from London and from from Florida, you're still Coptic, and you're still that person, you're still that community. And so wherever they wind up meeting through these programs, they still wind up feeling as though they've known each other their whole lives, even though they're just getting to know each other. And I think that's a beautiful aspect of the diaspora.
Yeah. I wanted to kind of bounce off of that with highlight a couple of things. First, our Coptic community in Nashville, Tennessee is actually growing a lot. It's a great example of how chain migration has gotten a community to grow. And so they say that it started with somebody who worked in the hospitality industry in a hotel and was able to kind of bring family members to the United States, or maybe even if he didn't bring them, friends and family were arriving in the United States, and he brought them to kind of work in the industry as well. And so an example of how chain migration and a community builds around just one or two people. Another thing I was going to highlight is that I thankfully had the opportunity to participate in the Logos Youth Forum that our Patriarch Pope Tewedros puts on, or rather really any Coptic patriarch would put on, and it happens for Coptic youth in the diaspora everywhere. And I was able to see where are our Coptic people, and just seeing how we were able to conduct the liturgy in many languages, and different people were going up and reading the lectionary, each in his or her own language. It was really great to see, Copts from everywhere all over the world. And so even though we have kind of highlighted that there are big Coptic communities in English-speaking countries like the UK, Australia, Canada, and the US, there are many Coptic people in non-English speaking countries as well, even as like in Sudan and in other parts of the Middle East. So that's important to keep in mind.
Excellent. Well, you mentioned, both of you referred to diaspora programs. I'd like to jump on that topic and ask you a bit about the work you do as an organization. Obviously, you're here with us as part of the legal team at Coptic Orphans. So I'd love to hear what you've got going on in Coptic Orphans right now.
Sure. So Coptic Orphans is a remarkable organization. They are the largest. We are the largest nonprofit in Egypt, and one of the largest Coptic organizations in the world. Coptic Orphans has 3 flagship programs. The best way to kind of think of them is one by one. So the first program is our Not Alone program, and that's our founder, Nermeen Riyad, when she started the organization 35 years ago, this was the program. It's a sponsorship model. And so Coptic Orphans focuses on helping the vulnerable youth of Egypt to reach their God-given potential. In Egypt, there's this weird dynamic where if you're fatherless, you're somewhat considered orphaned, right? And so what winds up happening is we have in this program, this Not Alone program, children who don't have a father or a mother, and children who just don't have a father. Regardless, we play that role. And so what winds up happening is we connect sponsors with program participants in Egypt. These program participants can range from age. I mean, we've had program participants who are infants, right, who are orphaned in infancy. And we have them who start right before college. But the lifespan of the program is the lifespan of the child's education. So if you decide to go pursue a doctorate, we're with you from the day you started your education till the day that you achieve that milestone. It uses a sponsorship model, so we find donors from around the world who sponsor their child. I have 2 sponsored children. Absolutely love them. They're the sweetest young boys, and we get progress reports on how they do in school, and we can send them gifts, and we can write letters back and forth, and Coptic Orphans facilitates all of that. We actually just launched a new application, mobile application on the Apple Store. So everyone's feel free to download it. You can sponsor a child there. You can, stay in touch with your children, and you can send letters back and forth. So that's what I've just been using. But it's a really simple system where you're paying a small monthly fee. That small monthly fee covers their entire housing, their entire education, their entire medical expenses, transportation. We really make sure that the program participants understand that they're not, they're not. This isn't a pity case. This is an exchange. In exchange for you reaching your potential, we'll help you get there. And so 100% of our students are currently enrolled in schools. We've had hundreds and hundreds of students graduate at the highest degrees, highest levels. We've given out hundreds of scholarships over there in Egypt for this program. And again, this program is one where it's a lifespan. So it's you spend some time with these kids. And so we have a story where one of our donors, to him it was just a monthly fee. He said it was just a monthly transaction. I never realized the impact it had. And I had my pictures of the child when we got the sponsorship packet. You get a headshot of the child, and he had that child for like 5, 6 years, 7 years, right? He finally goes to visit because we organize we organize the ability for a sponsor to go visit their child. Finally goes and visits and sees that the child is, he's grown so much. He's so tall, and and he writes back and says, it's the only thing that blew my mind was that I didn't sponsor more kids. It blew his mind of the impact that he was having on this child, to the point where he's like, in his letter, he was telling us, the pyramids were cool and all, but visiting his house meant I felt at home. And it's such a powerful connection that you can build. And it's all tailored through Coptic Orphans. I mean, Coptic Orphans make sure that, we have really, really strict, stringent child protection policies in place. We make sure that there's never a picture of the child taken in a way that makes them look like they're needy or that they're upset or sad. These children are success stories. They're miracles. And so we only portray them as such. And so that's our first flagship program, the Not Alone program. That one has helped so far over the last 35 years, more than 80,000 children.
In total, 86,000 vulnerable children.
86,000 vulnerable. This year alone, we have over 16,000 sponsored, I believe. So, and we're trying to grow and grow and grow. The goal is to have a regular 20,000 sponsored children every year. And so, remarkable on the ground efforts. I mean, you're talking 900 plus volunteers that are, this isn't like a once a month volunteer program. Like, no, these are 9 to 5 volunteers that even if you offered them money, they would say, absolutely not, this is a service. This is what I do for my Lord.
That's based on experience,
That's based on experience.
And of those 900, how many are in Egypt? How many are...
They're all in Egypt.
All in
all our
Egypt.
programs focus on Egypt. But we have 5 offices. We have the Fairfax headquarters, where Elaria and I work and we manage the legal department. We have the London office, the Toronto, Mississauga office, and then an office in Australia, and then our biggest office is in Egypt. Our Egypt office has over 100 employees now, well over 100 employees, and then on top of those 100 employees, 900 plus volunteers. And again, when you're talking 15 to 20,000 children sponsored every year, the goal is no child should be left for more than 2 weeks without a home visit. So these volunteers are constantly in their homes, helping not just the children, but any of their family members. So if their mother is a widow, we make sure that she has the resources she needs to find healing and to be able to raise her children, and have them reach their God-given potential. So that's our biggest program. I mean, that's the one that we're known for. That's the program that it has touched the lives of more than 80,000, we said?
So 86,000 all programs.
Every time I look, the number goes up.
It's a good thing.
It's a good thing, absolutely. So that's our first program, the Not Alone program. The second is the Valuable Girl Project. This is my personal favorite. I mean, the stories you hear from this is life-changing. It is visionary. It is groundbreaking. I can't talk enough about the Valuable Girl Project. The Valuable Girl Project uses a big sister, little sister model and focuses specifically on education. And so we find villages in the Said, in South Egypt, where their education isn't, forget a prerequisite. It's not even a forethought, right? And so especially with young girls, their mothers and their grandmothers were raised with the concept of these girls are more like property than they are like individual humans. And so we wanted to find a way to kind of address that in the most secular villages. What we found is by utilizing a big sister, little sister model that focuses on education, all the families still would love to educate their children. And so when we introduced it as if the big sister is Christian, then the little sister is Muslim, and vice versa, we received a lot of pushback at first, but then eventually all that pushback kind of dies out. Why? Because you're seeing the kids come back, you're seeing these young girls come back, who never knew how to read, are now telling you, hey, can I get a computer because I want to learn, programming in first and second grade. The older sisters are always in university, so they set a standard, right? That a woman can be educated, and that regardless of her gender, she can work her way up and be, make a name for herself. And so we do like testing, right? So at the beginning of the program, it's a 2-year cycle. So we've changed villages. Like I don't say that lightly. We've changed villages over a cycle of 2 years. In 2 years, what we'll do is we'll do an initial evaluation, a midterm evaluation, and then a final evaluation. In the early evaluation, you'll ask them a question like, can a girl become the prime minister of Egypt? And what the response is, no, she cannot. And you'll see that frequently. In the middle, we'll ask, can a girl become the prime minister of Egypt? And they'll say, yeah, she can, but I couldn't. Right, and so you're starting to see some development there, and then in the final one, they'll say something along the lines of, "Yeah, I can't wait to go. I can't wait to try it."
Right.
And so it's this evolution of not just their educational capacity, but their persona, their psychological their psychological capacity as well, their psychological capital.
Like the whole worldview changes.
It changes.
Yeah.
It changes, and it's not just the younger girls that have this, that receive this effect. It's the older sisters as well, right? The older sisters wind up realizing how much of a difference they can make just by extending the education that they received to others. We provide a full curriculum, right? So we teach them how to teach, and then they go off and teach their younger sisters. The interesting thing is, throughout all of this, I haven't mentioned interfaith dialogue.
Yeah.
Right? Because interfaith dialogue is not the point of this, it's not a main principle of this program. It's a side effect, and it's a remarkable side effect. I mean, you have situations where, I remember one of the young girls that we talked to, she was an older sister. And before she started this program, she would say, she was Muslim, she would say, if I saw a Christian priest walking towards me, I would pray to Allah that the floor would open, and the ground would create a great hole that I could fall into and hide, so that I don't have to look or interact with this priest. After the 2-year cycle, that priest was the first person invited to her wedding. And so it's a remarkable impact on interfaith dialogue, where you're just raising exposure to the other side, having them see we're not really different. And there's, I could spend hours talking about this, but I love this program. The stories behind it are remarkable. I'll share just one more to kind of highlight that it's not just the younger sister that's affected or the older sister that's affected, but what I mean when I say the whole village changes. I was in Minya just last year, around January, February. We visited one of the Valuable Girl sites. I'm walking around the village and I'm seeing these light posts, and on the light posts are Coptic Orphans logo. The lawyer in me, being chief counsel of the organization, I'm like, yo, who used our logo without getting approval for copyright infringement? Like, what's going on here? And so I'm kind of alerted. I'm like, I don't know why this logo is on there. We sit down, we start talking to them. At the end of every 2-year cycle, the Valuable Girl Project requires that the older sisters lead a community initiative. These community initiatives range, right? So there's always a community initiative for any site, any Valuable Girl site, and they range. So some will, one of the sites completely cleaned a abandoned train station. And so the government was then able to utilize that train station because these girls and their younger sisters went in and cleaned it. So they're telling us about this site, and they say, we found that the younger sisters would come to the tutoring sessions, and during the tutoring sessions, we'd ask them what they learned in school, how school was, and they would say, we don't go to school. And we started investigating, why aren't the parents letting these kids go to school? They're letting them come to learn here, why not learn at school? And they realized there's a long commute. As a result of that long commute between the village and the school, when they get back, it's really late, 10:30, 11, it's dark. And so the village didn't have any light posts. It's a village in the middle of nowhere in Minya. And they didn't have any light posts. So there was no light, and the parents felt uncomfortable having their young daughters travel in the village without any light. So the community initiative was determined, and the older sister said, we're going to put up light posts. There's pictures, we'll definitely have to share them with you, Rich. They're incredible. I mean, you have these young girls in the university and, elementary school girls, right? Like first and second grade, like children putting up light posts and working electrical. And so, 2 or 3 light posts are being put up, and then the men of the village see this. Mm-hmm. The men of the village, their pride digs in. Hey, this is like an 11-year-old, and she's putting this light post together. I could do this. Right. Why would I not? Why would I not? I mean, these girls are doing it. I can do it too. Yeah. And so the entire village gets lit up. And so those are the light posts with our logos on them. When you walk through that village in Minya, it's bright as day.
That's incredibly poetic, actually, because they're literally lighting the village, but they're actually enlightening the village by and showing this example that not only can this program change me, but it can empower me to change my community.
Absolutely. It's amazing. It's an absolutely groundbreaking initiative. And, to be honest with you, it's not a matter of like, the goal wasn't to set out and have them focus on interfaith dialogue. That was never the goal. The goal was to educate these young women and inspire their older sisters. What we found is that the families themselves now call each other families. And so you'll have situations where the Christians are going to congratulate or celebrate Eid with the Muslims, and the Muslims are coming to celebrate Easter with the Christians. And when we were there, we were at a monastery, and one of the VGP sites had they heard we were there. They heard Nermeen was there.
What is VGP?
Valuable Girl.
Okay.
The Valuable Girl Project. One of the sites heard that Nermeen was there, and they were nearby. And so all the girls, because they had heard so much about Nermeen, they'd always wanted to see Nermeen, got into a car and drove to the monastery. Yeah. So you had these, incredible young women, Muslim and Christian alike, in the monastery just to visit Nermeen. While they're there, they're learning about the different faith. And that was never the intention. And so, everyone says, how do you get, how does the local sheikhs feel? How do the local priests feel? And they're the first ones to get on board. I mean, there's always a little bit of, concern at first because it is such a unique concept. But our program manager and our programs director really, really handle all of them well and make sure that every concern is addressed. And we really make sure that these girls become the future of Egypt. And so I absolutely love that program. I can tell you hundreds of stories. Our third flagship program is called our Diaspora Initiative, and it consists of like 2 sub-programs. You have the Serve to Learn, which with all these children in Egypt that are in our programs, we'd love to teach them English. And so what we do is, for a really nominal fee, we'll take care of your lodging, your food, everything. You pay for your flight, you pay this nominal fee, and you and your entire family can come and serve Egypt and serve the kids of Egypt and teach them English in a remarkable fashion. I mean, the kids are so excited to learn. That's the paid, you pay for that, but at the same time, the trip is life-changing. The newer initiative that we started is the 21 program. The 21 program is named after the 21 martyrs of Libya, and it's fully funded. So, certain age, kids within a certain age. Can you remind me the age? Do you know?
18 to 23.
18 to 23.
Before going into that, I'd love to kind of share with our viewers a little bit more what you're talking about. So we're approaching a 10-year anniversary. If you could share a bit about what we're going to be commemorating coming up.
So the 21 program is named after the 21 martyrs of Libya. The 21 martyrs of Libya were 20 Egyptian and 1 Ghanaian young men who went to Libya for work. They were captured by ISIS. There was a period of time where they were being tortured, and then at the end of this ordeal, they were martyred. They were beheaded on a beach of Libya. They became ambassadors for our faith, right? I mean, the whole world kind of stopped and paid attention, and the names of the Copts were ones that became relevant for the first time in a long time. And it was all because of their sacrifice, and it was all because of their resilience. And this February marks 10 years since that time. since that incident. And so Coptic Orphans is actually, we're pursuing a pretty ambitious global initiative, global campaign to bring the eyes of the world back and remind them of the sacrifice of the 21 martyrs.
It's an image that none of us, certainly I can't get out of my head. 10 years ago, the 21 orange jumpsuits on the beach in Libya, who until their last moment refused to abandon their Savior and faith in their Savior. So it certainly left an impression on me and many others, I'm sure, who follow In Defense of Christians' work. Incredibly moving. You went to Egypt not long ago and you brought back a beautiful icon. And I still want to thank you yet again. It was an incredibly beautiful icon of the 21 martyrs. So anything we can do as In Defense of Christians to help you out in this upcoming commemoration in January 2025. It's our absolute pleasure to do so.
I mean, you've been so helpful.
Yeah, I was going to say thank you for organizing the Advocacy Day and other things like that. Things like that are instrumental for us to be able to kind of talk about what we're doing, not only as an organization and as an organization that has a very large grassroots presence in Egypt, but also as an organization that acknowledges its position in the world as the world's largest Coptic organization. It's up to us to kind of like be the voice for the Coptic people in a lot of ways. And so one of the ways we do this, obviously, is talking about incidents like what happened with the 21 martyrs and using them as a beacon of hope, not only for Coptic Christians, but for other Middle Eastern Christians, for Christians at large, for people of faith at large, for anybody who believes in any creed. And so for us to be able to kind of participate in Advocacy Day and other initiatives like that, where we have the opportunity to educate the American public about these incidents and kind of things that are happening on the ground for Coptic Christians, it's a wonderful opportunity for us to amplify those voices that are often silenced.
Well, could you tell us a bit about what's going to be going into the commemoration later, or early next year?
Sure. So the commemoration technically is in February, right? So the actual day of commemoration is February 15th. We have three big initiatives that are happening right now, and many of them are still in the planning stages. So one of them is we're sending a delegation trip to Egypt. We're hoping to send congressional members to Egypt. This will give them the opportunity to see how the Coptic Christian life really goes down on the ground on a daily basis. We'd also love to connect them with the families of the 21 martyrs so that they can hear those experiences firsthand. It is not merely a video you watched. It is not merely, something you heard about talked on the news or on television. It's something you actually saw. You saw the widows of these people, these martyrs, these brave men, and you also saw their children and how they've grown over the past 10 years. Something that we at Coptic Orphans are very proud of is that after the martyrdom of these 21 men, we actually took their widows and children under our wing, and they are all participants in our programs now. So as fatherless children, again, in Egypt, they are considered orphans, and we're proud to say that they are part of Coptic Orphans family. So we have a wonderful connection in that way in Egypt. And similarly, in addition to the congressional delegation, we would love to send a delegation of press, media, other content creators, so that, again, they can amplify this voice, go to Egypt, see how things look on the ground, give an understanding to the public of what exactly is happening for Coptic Christians in Egypt and also in the diaspora as well. And then another initiative that we're having is that we'll be having a gala in the DC area. This gala, again, will feature people who went on the trip. They'll be able to speak about how that was. We will have a family member, at least one of the 21 martyrs, to give a speech about his or her experience being a family member of the 21 martyrs and also how it's been over the last decade. And we're really excited about that because we have a good lineup of keynotes and other things that we're confident will give people a sense of exactly what Coptic Christianity means, especially not only in Egypt, but here in the diaspora as well. And then in addition to that gala, we have sort of a moving tour, if you will, throughout the United States, in Canada, in Australia, that will feature a film about the 21 martyrs, and will also feature something like a museum-like exhibit of their portraits, more information about each of them, humanizing their story. They are not merely 21 men who died and we move on. No, it's 10 years later. It's time to recognize, what they've done. 10 years is an excellent opportunity to kind of bring back to the forefront of our memory who in fact these men were. And talking about their stories and making sure that their stories are personal to all of us. And the last thing, of course, is that we would love some sort of vocalization on the House or Senate floor, about the 21 martyrs. That's something that we're working on. And we have, in addition to the Advocacy Day, we have our own meetings lined up as well today, throughout the week, throughout the past few months, and going into the next few months to sort of encourage House and Senate members to talk about the 21 martyrs specifically and about Coptic Christianity at large. In order to, again, amplify that voice, bring attention to that story, using the 21 martyrs as ambassadors for the Coptic Christian cause. And also, everything is to bring glory to God's name, of course, but we also want to honor these martyrs and everything that they've done for us as Copts to make us more visible on a global stage.
That's wonderful. I wish you the best of luck coming up in January and leading up to it.
Thanks.
Like I said, if there's anything In Defense of Christians can do, it's not only our duty, but it's certainly our pleasure. Before we wrap up, I would love you to look into the camera at our audience and tell them how can they help or sponsor a Coptic Orphan if they feel so inclined and moved to do so.
Sure. So you can certainly help us by coming to our events, and all of our events are posted not only on our social media, but also on our website. In addition to that, you're welcome to come volunteer with us. You don't have to be in the office. You can also volunteer from home. We love having volunteers help us. And even yesterday during the Advocacy Day, we had several volunteers join us to advocate for the Coptic Christians. Finally, you could support a child if you go online to our website, just click on the sponsorship button and get more information about the child that you'll be supporting and sending a stipend to every once in a while. Likewise, as Josh mentioned, we have a Coptic Orphans mobile app on the Apple App Store. You can download that and make sure that you get in touch that way. Please feel free to be in touch at any time. We would love to hear from you. We would love to have your support.
Outstanding. Thank you so much, Elaria, Josh.
Thank you
so much.
It was great talking.
Absolute
Appreciate
pleasure,
it.
man.
Thank you.
Absolute
Thank
pleasure.
you.